You mentioned the starting lineup. Jason, the starting lineup was a topic of conversation going in. In hindsight, did JJ Redick make a mistake going with Gabe Vincent in the starting five? And if so, what should you do about it?
So I was less worked up about it. Gabe's not who I would have started. I would have started Jared Vanderbilt. But I kind of look at it as there was no clear option. It wasn't like there was a dude in camp who had, quote unquote, earned the spot. As a matter of fact, if you wanted to go off of the quality of play, who played best in camp, Gabe, Vando, Jake LaRavia, Marcus Smart, I'd argue Gabe played better than everybody in camp. And so it obviously came with some limitations. So for instance, like let's say you have Jared Vanderbilt out there instead of Gabe. Is he going to get targeted as often by Jimmy Butler the way that Gabe Vincent was? Obviously not. But the flip side is, via staggering, Gabe would have ended up out there anyway. And in the minutes he was out there, he would have been targeted by Jimmy anyway. So it's not like that was something that was going to be unique to the starting lineup as a problem. And, the way I looked at it is I went down the line. Each guy kind of presented some obvious upsides and some obvious downsides. Like Jared Vanderbilt obviously changes the athletic profile of the lineup. He adds a rebounding element and can guard the opposing best player probably better than anybody on the roster, right? So that's an upside. But the downside is, like, for all of the optimism surrounding Jared offensively in camp, like, oh, the jump shot looks better. He's putting the ball on the floor. Where every time he took a jump shot, it looked awful. And every time that he put the ball on the floor, it looked awful in that game. And so, like, there's obviously a huge offensive downside that comes with that. Marcus Smart has shown a lot of, like, kind of gimmicky defensive playmaking with just kind of his savvy and his flopping and a lot of that kind of stuff where he made some plays on defense. And I've been generally impressed by his more refined offensive skill, like putting the ball on the floor and hitting shots in the mid-range. He's got a nice soft touch on his floater. He hits them off the dribble jump shots in preseason as well. But I haven't liked what he's looked like overall athletically on the ball. I think he's looked overmatched from a speed standpoint. Hopefully that changes as the weeks go by. But, because those injuries, they tend to take a little while for you to get your legs underneath you. But I don't think he looks ready for that yet. Jake LaRavia has looked slow and has not brought enough offensively to be like some obvious offensive option at that position. And then you have Gabe, who literally was like shooting the lights out all preseason, both in featured roles and in off-ball roles. Like, yeah, he shot the lights out against Dallas, but then he also, in an off-ball role against Sacramento, hit a bunch of shots playing off of the attention from the stars. And so I looked at Gabe as like a guy who could guard the opposing best player, who could obviously dribble, shoot, and pass well enough to kind of grease the wheels with that unit. He just clearly gave up a size and physicality element. And the Warriors attacked it. And there's a couple things, too, where you go like, maybe they offer a little bit more help and crowd Jimmy more on some of those ISOs, and it looks a little better. I thought that Jimmy got a BS foul call in the early third quarter where he drove against Gabe on the left side, and Gabe slid with him, took contact in the chest, and Jimmy just threw a shot up. Like, I don't really blame Gabe for that. I thought it was a bad call. So, like, to Gabe's point after the game, when he was talking about how he was getting attacked and how that's actually good for the defense, he's technically right if he wins like one or two more of those battles. You win one or two more of those battles. There was one where like Jimmy missed a shot against him, but they got an offensive rebound. You win a couple more of those battles, suddenly it's correct. You are stagnating the opponent. You are getting the Warriors out of their flow. They're playing one-on-one instead of playing their motion offense. And so it's more just like another example of playing the results, in my opinion. Jimmy hit a couple tough shots. He got a couple calls, and there was an upside to having Gabe out there compared to someone like Vando, if that makes sense.
Jovan, I need to get your take on the starting lineup because you and I have been in agreement. I don't know if, Jason, you were pro Marcus Smart starting before we got to game one or not. I know Jovan was. I was as well. But I got to ask, before we get to that, this comment came in: the Godfather, the Kingpin, and the Mastermind. We are spoiled. Are those our nicknames? Is that us?
Which one is which?
So this has been going on my show. Trevor is the Godfather. I am the Kingpin, and Jason is the Mastermind.
That's hilarious. I love it.
So, yeah, right. We got to get those graphics under.
That's we'll get
under us right here. I agree with basically everything Jason said. I think from a philosophical perspective, the one thing I'll note is I think this is like a larger discussion with the Lakers defensive strategy where I guess I'm kind of against their passivity with their switching. And even looking at the Gabe versus Steph, like there were plenty of possessions where Gabe was matched up with Steph. And I would also argue that I didn't think he did a particularly good job. He got back cut 3 times, a couple times lost him around, navigating multiple screens, which is going to happen with Steph because he's so quick and the gravity, and like the Lakers could have handled that better. And you could also argue like there should have been help scenarios where if Gabe got back cut, there was some help. But with especially in the second half, they just started. It would be Steph would bring the ball up. There would be some type of screening action to get Luka or someone else switched onto Steph. Then Gabe would be on Jimmy or Kuminga or whoever. And it would either be some type of off-ball action to leverage Steph's speed against a slower defender, or they would find whoever Gabe was guarding and try to create a mismatch there, often with Jimmy. So I think if they're fighting through the screens and trying to keep it with the original matchups a little bit more frequently, I kind of get it more. But if you're going to be switching everything and continuing to do this 1 through 4, the second there's any contact or motion, we're just switching it. I think that's where Marcus Smart and Jared Vanderbilt make far more sense because of their defensive versatility and their ability to scale up onto bigger players. So, like, despite on paper there not being the biggest difference between Marcus Smart and Gabe Vincent, I would much rather have a Marcus Smart on a Jimmy Butler, on a Jonathan Kuminga, or looking ahead against like a Julius Randle, because if they're going to keep Gabe in the starting lineup and they're going to continue to defend this way, if I'm Minnesota, I'm looking at that and I'm finding ways to get Julius Randle matched up with Gabe Vincent, right? And I feel like the Lakers have been too passive with that, and then also not aggressive enough with their help in those scenarios. And I think, like to Jason's point, there is something to getting a team out of its offensive flow and really trying to hammer mismatches and iso ball. But I feel like the Lakers actually lose those matchups more often than not, and they keep being like, well, we're gonna, the process is right, but the results aren't there. And it's like, well, at some point you have to look at the results. And I feel like they continually get like this happened a lot in the Minnesota series. This happened a lot in some matchups last season. The most famous one for me that I've referenced a bunch is like the KD one early in the season last year, where the Phoenix had a big comeback, and the fourth quarter was just spamming, where's Gabe Vincent? Bring Gabe Vincent into the action, have him switch onto Kevin Durant, and have Kevin Durant either shoot over him or have the help defender come over and then spray out for a 3. So I think LA, like, this has been a bit of a blind spot in my opinion for the coaching staff defensively. And obviously they had some nice results for like that 24 game stretch, but before and after that, they were a bottom 10 defense. And I don't think this is the best way to maximize this defensive talent.
No, one quick note in terms of process, because like, let's follow this thought through to conclusion. So let's say we take Gabe off the floor and we put a Marcus Smart out there or Jared Vanderbilt out there. Essentially what will happen there is the process for the opponent changes, and it will shift towards attacking Luka with a faster player or attacking Austin with a stronger player. And yeah, will Austin hold up a little bit better than Gabe will? Sure, but the same problem persists. Like, let's say on Friday night, Julius Randle's looking to attack Austin Reeves in space because we've heard that JJ might make starting lineup adjustments opponent to opponent. So, by the way, Jovan, do you have any intel on whether or not Gabe's going to start on Friday?
No update on that yet.
So,
I mean, I would assume that he probably does, but I think especially against Minnesota and that size, like there's just, I don't like him against Gobert. I don't like him against Randall. I don't like him against McDaniels. I don't like him against Ant. So that's a tough
to your
one.
Point, the process will have the process will still come down to a defensive game planning piece where, let's say that they're attacking Luka with Ant, or they're attacking Austin with Julius. There's going to need to be more planning on the backside. And by the way, when you reference last year, this is what I keep thinking about too. I think it has a little bit more to do with being prepared to get beat in that one-on-one than necessarily like putting yourself in a position where you're not going to get beat. The Lakers just don't have the defensive personnel to throw out 5-man units that there's no easy person to attack. It's just not something that they have personnel-wise. And so I think like we did see some of this, by the way, in terms of the defensive game plan they used against most guards, where it'd be like, okay, they're attacking off the slot. We're going to funnel towards the sideline. we're going to, and they did a lot against Minnesota of like pinching in a little bit off the strong side corner, for example. Like there are little things you can do. They just need to have a plan because, to your point, there were a lot of Jimmy on Gabe post-ups where there was quite literally no gapping, no back line, no nothing. It was just you're on your own, Gabe. And that is where you're essentially setting yourself up for failure.
So what is what should be the solution then? Should they change their starting five at this point and bring Gabe out of there? And then who takes that spot? Is it Smart? Smart, by the way, does have a 6'9" wingspan. That does allow it also helps that he's like a fire hydrant, right? He's impossible to move. So I do agree with you that you got to do something. Jovan, you're on the side of starting Marcus Smart. Jason, is that where you're at as well?
Yeah, Smart or Vando would be the two ways that I would go. I know that Vando has been completely putrid on offense to start, but I do think he'll be better. I like there are certain things where like that baseline lob that Luka threw him in the first half where he just like kind of fumbled it and threw up that kind of garbagey reverse layup. Like I think Vando's capable of finishing a play like that. There was a play where he drove right into Draymond and Jackson Hayes was wide open for a drop-off dunk, and he just tried to shoot through Draymond. And it's like, I think Vando's capable of making a play like that. Jovan and I were joking yesterday, like, I think he's capable of hitting, 34, 33% of his threes. And Jovan's like, let's start with 18%. Let's build up from there. But like,
and then you're like, let's start with hitting the rim.
Start slow. But either way, I think those are fine options. I mean, the other thing too is with Gabe, like he's effectively your third best ball handler now. So there's a certain amount of like staggering where you kind of need him to be anchoring bench units with ball handling anyway. All I'm saying is that let's not pretend like there was this obvious like option that was clearly the right choice. Like I think every single one of the four options had clear downsides, including like with Marcus, like he looks slow right now and he also can't shoot threes right now. So like there's obvious downsides with every single one of these dudes.